Welcome into the Invest Well Show. I'm your host, Michael Wall. As always, we're going to talk on the show today about the topic of what is under the hood of your investments. You know, so often we think about years ago, and if you're a car person, you say, how much horsepower is in that car? And you lift up the hood and you see the engine and say, what's actually there powering it well? But unfortunately, so often in life, people don't necessarily take the time to look under the hood, lift it up, and actually see what's in their investment portfolio and why it is or is not performing the way it should or shouldn't be. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to unpack that today on the Invest Well Show. All right, so it's kind of a corny concept, what's under the hood, but it really is true. And, you've probably seen it before where whether you're a car person or not, you've seen people talking about this car and goes 0 to 60 this fast. And, it used to be Ferraris were the fastest and then Mercedes. And, of course, we just had F1 down here in Miami, and that was a really great race. Really, really fun stuff, right? And so those cars are super fast. But when you talk about 0 to 60, as far as speed today, a lot of people are talking about Teslas and how fast and quick they are, and they got a bunch of battery packs kind of underneath the car, not even under the hood. So the game has changed there a little bit. But when it comes to your investments, I really wanted to take a few moments and talk about this on this show because there's so much marketing that happens out there. I mean, even this show in a lot of aspects and respects, quite honestly, is marketing, right? It's information that we're sharing to try and help you think a little bit differently. There's sponsors of this show, Wall Private Wealth and U.S. Private Wealth, which have been helping families for years build and protect and grow and reduce taxes on their wealth. And so we have so many signals coming at us in so many different ways that sometimes it can be hard to navigate what is really under the hood. And let's kind of unpack that. I remember hearing or reading just recently some commentary from the gentleman that decided they wanted to kind of bring the F1 to Miami. And the question was asked and posed to him, hey, do you think this was a good idea? And obviously in the very first race and building the track and doing all the stuff that they did, there's a lot of expense and a lot of marketing dollars that goes into that. And his response pretty much was, ask me in 2.5 years how this has been. In other words, give us a little bit of time to let this kind of all work out. A driver for F1 or anyone else in general, obviously, they're not going to get into a car or even put that car in a race as prestigious as the F1 races, unless they know exactly what's in that car, unless they know exactly what's, quote unquote, under the hood. Right? How fast it is, the horsepower, the braking system, the steering system, the electronics. They're going to really know what's under the hood. But unfortunately, when we look at investments, there are so many people that literally do not understand what's actually happening in their investment portfolio. And so it causes these times, as I'm recording this right now, it's May 11th in 2022, and the markets have been down. The S&P actually year to date has been down almost 17% from January to now. The Dow has been down almost 12% year-to-date, January to now, of May 11, 2022. And not everybody's fared that way, by the way. There's a lot of portfolios. In fact, I know the sponsored companies, U.S. Private Wealth in particular, they're in a situation where that portfolio has actually been positive. We've done some numbers around 3% for the year, which is not massive, but it's huge when you think about the market's been down 17 and the S&P, and the Dow's been down 12, and that's actually positive. It's a big, big shift. That comes from understanding what's under the hood. And so when you look at your portfolio, you got to know that. Because as a consumer, you, again, are being marketed to in so many different ways. You watch CNBC, you watch Fox Business, you watch Bloomberg, you read the Wall Street Journal. And by the way, I've commentated or shared thoughts on most all of those national outlets in the past. And when you watch those outlets, a lot of people don't think about the fact that the reality that they are literally a marketing machine. Why? Because if they don't get your eyeballs, they can't sell advertisers why they should advertise on that network. And if they can't do that, they can't make money. I want you to think about that for a minute. So when you look at your investment portfolio, you have to say, okay, what is actually going on? There's a company out there today, which I'm not going to mention myself personally, but I'm going to put it up on the screen and you can read it on your own. And I'm going to use some language here and some verbiage. We're actually going to be having him on the show here soon. David Walker, he is the previous comptroller for the United States, Comptroller General. So you may say, what is the Comptroller General for the U.S.? Well, the Comptroller General is someone that their job is to help the government look for ways to save billions of dollars a year in spending. That's their job. So basically, we'll call them the lead accountant, right? Books and numbers guy, if you will, girl, whoever it is at the time, for the country. Well, he served from 1998 to 2008. So he served in a 10-year span. He actually served under Clinton, and he served under Bush. And I thought it was interesting. You've probably seen some advertisements from an organization out there that says, we do better when you do better. They're all over CNBC and all over TV talking about how they only do better when you do better and all that kind of stuff. Well, here's what he had to say with that firm. And this is what he said out there. Now, this is his words, not mine. I'm going to put it to you on the screen. Now, this is from LinkedIn. This was a post from LinkedIn about 2 weeks ago. And here's what he said. This is David in his own words. Remember, the former U.S. Comptroller General for the United States. He said, I just fired Fisher Investments. They are not what they claim to be. They do not have performance-based fees, despite the strong inference to the contrary from their ads. They did not come close to beating the market in the past year for me. Last week, they lost 2.5 times more than the market. They had at least 8 total dog stocks in their standard portfolio. And in addition, their bond duration is too long given current market conditions and expectations. And I'm like, wow, talk about a dagger to that company. Now, I'm not suggesting anything positive or negative myself towards them. All I'm doing is reading what David himself wrote on his LinkedIn profile, which you could go look up David on LinkedIn and search that and see it. It's just interesting to me that here's one organization that does a tremendous amount of marketing. You know, you see a lot of advertisements and things like that in different areas on the web and in print, talking about if you have at least $500,000 or at least $1 million or tips to retire well or all these other things as well as commercials. They market like crazy. And here's a gentleman that literally had his investments with that company and shared with you the response that he had. Now, I'm not saying that that's the experience that every client had with them. I don't know. But that was his experience and that was his response. Very, very harsh in words. And I got to tell you, as a consumer, it's so important that you are in a situation where you take the time to actually look under the hood of the actual firm or the investments that you're working with. That's so important. You have to make sure that you're looking at your investments as a company. You want to grow that company. You don't want that company to shrink. And as the CEO, you being the CEO of your company, your investments that are $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $10 million, $100 million, $500 million, billions, whatever the number is, you are the CEO of that organization, and you have to get the right people in the right chairs to help you make good decisions. So my goal and really intention with this show is to say I understand that you're getting a lot of marketing, a lot of things that are hitting you from all aspects out there in the financial space. Especially as you're getting ready to retire or you're already retired and you're thinking about, how do I do this well? My challenge is to be in a place where you take time to not just listen to the marketing, but actually look under the hood. So important. You know, if I put my other hat of owning financial companies for years and still do, and we have a team there of advisors that help families, one of the things that we always did, and I always was a proponent of making sure we look under the hood. Because we are in a situation, and those companies were in a situation where the client's best interest must be first. Nothing wrong with marketing. Nothing wrong with sharing your ideas. Nothing wrong with putting your name out there. Nothing wrong with branding. That's all part of growing a business. If you don't brand and you don't market, people aren't going to know who you are if you want to expand into new territory. So that's part of the deal. But you got to be willing and you got to be ready to back it up. Now, the other thing that I would say is I want to challenge you to be very, very focused and obtuse with your thought in relation to how certain companies have done. You know, the last thing you want to do is rely on another industry expert that's in the same industry that might say, hey, they've done this or they've done that. Because at the end of the day, most of the time under other industry professionals, if they're throwing stones or darts at other companies, they're oftentimes doing it because they just want the business, but they don't really have any understanding fully of what some companies have done. Listen, over the years of growing a business, I've experienced that. Other professionals in the industry throwing darts at us, whether that's whatever reason it is, whether it's jealousy or whether it's frustration or whether it's who knows what it is, but we've seen that happen over the years because people oftentimes are glass half empty people. And so I want to challenge you and encourage you as an investor to look beyond that noise and look beyond the fray wherever you live and say, okay, let's really understand what are my needs from an investment perspective, number one. Just like when they put the F1 race here in Miami, obviously they evaluated what the longer-term perspectives were, potential revenue and income was, profit to be made could be. They evaluated all of that before they built a track around Hard Rock. They didn't just say, well, let's just build a track and see what happens. There were a lot of future projections that were made before that even happened, before they then started to market and spend millions of dollars to market and bring companies to advertise and so on and so forth. You need to personally as well sit down, look at your investments and say, what am I trying to achieve? What stage of life am I in? What are my needs? What are my concerns? What does my income need? If you're in a place right now where your investments are all in the market and you're fearful and scared, you probably need to be changing the structure and what you're doing, diversify differently. And there's information to be had about there. All you're going to need to do is go over to leanonthewall.com. That's one of our sponsors, right? Go to leanonthewall.com. You can connect with the team members there, and they will help you walk through not only the efficient portfolio, they'll help you understand the appropriate amount of risk, and then also discuss with you what it looks like to actually diversify well in quality investment in products and structures that are off the stock market and yet still have the ability to have some quality potential returns and reduced taxation potentially as well along the way. All of these things matter. Head over to leanonthewall.com if you got questions for that and you want to connect with the team there. But I'm going to tell you, you got to step back and evaluate those things for yourself and say, okay, I see marketing, I hear marketing, but what is really under the hood? And is what under the hood what is under the hood match what I need? And I'll leave you with this last analogy. Can you imagine having a lady or a man that was 70 years old and was going to go out and buy a vehicle? They were going to go out and buy a car, and they needed a car pretty much just to kind of drive and see their kids and grandkids, maybe take a little road trip from time to time, go to the grocery store, go to church. That's what their need was. And somebody came up to them and said, I think you should buy a Ferrari. Or I think you should buy a F1 car. There's so-and-so that's actually selling that F1 car. That'd be amazing. Can you imagine driving yourself around in that car? It'd be incredible. Now, you may say at the onset there, like, Mike, that's crazy. Why would they do that? Well, that's a good question. Why would they? It wouldn't make any sense. So when they actually go to buy a car, they're going to evaluate the car that they're buying based on how they're going to use the car, what their needs are, right? A Ferrari or an F1 is not going to give them the amount of space that they need. Might be a great car and a good car, nothing wrong with having a Ferrari, right? But it's not right for what they need in that situation, right? They can't bring any of the grandkids with them. They got 3 or 4 grandkids. They can't fit in the back seat. It's not going to work. So that, even though it's a vehicle that has a lot of speed and a lot of excitement, is not necessarily the right thing for them. You need to evaluate. That's why you got to lift up the hood really and say, okay, what is going on with my investment structure? And do I have the type of investments that I need for the stage of life that I'm currently in? That's so important. Again, if you're challenged, you're frustrated, you're fearful, you're concerned right now, reach out to our sponsors at leanonthewall.com and reach out to the team member there. They can help you walk through that. As always, my encouragement really is to help you think differently. Think in a way that helps you to really evaluate what is actually going on with my investments. What is actually happening with where I'm at right now? And my encouragement for you is to share this show with someone that needs to hear it. And take time in your life to evaluate one of the most valuable things that you have worked years and years and years and years and years to build. And that is your wealth. It's so important. Don't miss out on opportunity that you could be receiving because you're lazily walking through this process and not being efficient with your monies. So important. Hey, listen, have a blessed one. Be well. And as always, my desire is to help you and guide you and encourage you and challenge you to live on purpose so you can live with purpose. Be blessed. Keep in mind, the information shared on this show is not to be considered investment advisory advice. For specific recommendations based on your situation, make sure you reach out to a professional, whether it be financial, accounting, tax, attorney, or whatever you may need to help you find the information necessary to make good decisions.